I guess we're live. David with his chocolate milk mustache already, right out of the gate. Okay, we're going to talk about this movie, Wonka. This is allegedly a prequel to the beloved Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I don't think it has anything to do with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the ill-conceived Tim Burton movie from 2005. But yeah, it is, the trailers advertise it, learn how Willy became Wonka. And I'll admit I have prejudices, like I think a lot of us do. When we see a movie trailer, we feel a certain kind of way. It's meant to evoke emotion. It's meant to evoke thoughts. It's meant to make you put you in a place of like, do I want to see this movie? What do I think this movie is going to be like? And I had my suspicions watching this candy-coated, fantasy candy movie, just watching the previews, that I don't see any connection to the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka. But I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll go see it. And I watched it. I fought the urge to get up and leave about every 10 minutes, but I made it through. And my stance still stands. There is no connection between this movie and the beloved 1971-ish classic. And I think that's a big problem. I could not enjoy this movie on its own merits. I don't think it has any, because it is at the same time relying on the nostalgia of that other picture, but also trying to be its own thing. But there's not even a Dune Part 2 indicator that we're going to get sort of a bridging chapter to see really how does Timothée Chalamet become Gene Wilder? That question is not answered anywhere in this movie. So I open up to the panel. What did y'all think of Wonka? Well, first of all, who is the panel? I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Mark, the candy movie man. Also, you're looking a little less orange today than you did during the TikTok review, which I did post a link to down in the description. Folks. You can check that out on your own time. Certainly not during the live stream. No. Of Special Mark Productions, Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree, and David Fowlie, who's always keeping it real. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to get into all the Wonka stuff tonight. And we're going to spoil this candy right now, because who knows where we're going to go with this conversation.
This candy has nuts in it.
Yeah, well, certainly the conversation does, because we're all a little bit nutty. Mark, what are you eating?
Oh, that was an Andy's candy. And then I've got some Lindor. I got some Lindor truffles. We've got a lot of them.
Just make sure there's no Yeti hair in it, and you should.
No, there's no Yeti hair in it.
Let me bark at that.
No. I feel like I'm at a loss. I don't have any candy near me. This is bad. Mike, do you have candy?
I did, but I stuffed it in stockings.
This will make you fly. I would drop this down here, but no. No, we have a bunch of Lindor candies because my wife wanted to get some for her employees that she helps manage. But there was a deal to where you could get only so much for this amount, but just a few dollars more, you could get like 300 pieces. So because it was a Black Friday sale, so we got like 300 pieces of Lindor chocolates in various flavors, like coconut, hazelnut, mint. I don't even know what this is. Pistachio.
Do they have snozzberry flavored ones?
No snozzberries. No. I was looking for the everlasting gobstopper too, but there was nothing.
Yeah. Boo. All right, so Mike, I'll start with you. What did you think of Wonka?
When I was approaching this movie, I kind of felt the way you did. I saw the trailer and I just thought, I want absolutely nothing to do with this film. This is going to just be a nostalgia trip. And why did they cast Timothée Chalamet? He's mostly known for like being very broody and serious in a lot of projects. And all of a sudden he's going to be replicating Gene Wilder. I saw the movie and I was surprised how entertained I was by it. And I was surprised by how much I liked the musical numbers. And even to a certain degree, there was like a charm to it that I think you couldn't have gotten from anyone else other than the Paddington director, who really kind of brings this childish sense of life without feeling like it's condescending to an audience for children, but also is made for them. But it's something like that the adults can enjoy too. To answer your question as to how it relates to the original Willy Wonka, I think he, like, if we're getting into spoilers, he builds the factory at the end of the movie. And that's kind of like his first foray into creating chocolate. Now, how it makes him cynical towards children the way he is in the original, and how he's kind of creating this weird death trap, and how he's this quirky kind of guy, or not quirky, but kind of creepy kind of guy. They didn't answer that.
As a parent, that comes with time.
Yeah, like I was thinking, like maybe that comes sometime later. But yeah, overall, I was surprised by how much I liked it. Now, there were things that didn't work. Some of the special effects in it looked a little special effecty. Like there's a sequence early on in the film where there's a bunch of floating chocolate, and it looked like people were chasing after a floating cartoon. And Timothée Chalamet was okay. He wasn't great. Like I'm hearing some things like, "Oh, he's fantastic," and I think he's nominated for a Golden Globe for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
Out.
I don't understand why. Like,
well, you know how Golden Globes, they break it up into musical and comedy and everything.
Yeah, but even for that, his singing was okay, but he's not Gene Wilder. But then again, Gene Wilder is eternal, and he can't be. I mean, he's a hell of a lot better than Johnny Depp when he was playing more of a Michael Jackson than he was playing Willy Wonka. But it was a film that surprisingly charmed me. That, you know, it hits a lot of fun little notes and has memorable little scenes, and even like a nice little side quest. I like the whole thing with the hotel manager and the lady who are kind of in love with each other, and they're both kind of gross and they attract to each other. I kind of like the whole thing with the chocolate cartel, and to a certain degree, I liked Hugh Grant's Oompa Loompa. I think I liked Hugh Grant more than I liked the special effects behind him.
Mm.
But with all those elements combined together, I was surprised. I was like, oh wow, I was about to just hate this film, and I came out liking it.
All right.
I would like to second that. I was charmed as well. Now, I went with an 11-year-old who really only wanted to see it because of, as he said, Mr. Bean. Every time he saw Rowan Atkinson, he shouted, "Mr. Bean!"
Nice.
in the IMAX AMC
Well,
theater.
hey,
And then
look, kudos to that kid for knowing who Mr. Bean is. More
Exactly.
Than his parents.
Yeah.
11. Wow.
Let me tell you, he's a huge fan of Man vs. Bee on Netflix. Watch that. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then on my other side was my 17-year-old daughter, who was only there for
Timothée Chalamet.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there mainly because, you know, I was very curious about the trailer too. The trailer, this trailer, the Color Purple trailer, and the Mean Girls trailer all did their best to kind of skirt around the fact that these are 3 musicals.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you watch the trailers, they're like, especially Color Purple and Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Now those are movie adaptations of stage musicals.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not marketed that way at all. It's so interesting.
Well, the Color Purple definitely is. It's just they show a lot of people singing and dancing. They just don't have like the songs playing. It's very odd.
Right, but it said it doesn't even say an adaptation of the Broadway musical or whatever.
They even did that
they want
with
people to go see it.
Yeah,
they even did that. They even did that with the Journey to Bethlehem trailer, in that they didn't.
Is that a musical too?
That's a musical.
Oh,
See,
I didn't know
that's
that.
a musical too. I didn't know until I looked up what it was, because I saw a couple of trailers for it, and it's still showing at the theater nearby. I haven't gone seen it.
And you still haven't taken the Journey.
No, I haven't taken the Journey yet, but
It might be better than Nachos.
That is a musical, and I didn't realize it was a musical. I did in the trailer, because you see little clips from musical numbers, but not too much. Then I read up the description, and apparently it's the retelling of The Greatest Story Ever Told, but with modern songs written for the time, for their musical numbers. So they're taking newer songs and putting it in this period Journey to Bethlehem piece.
Okay.
And I didn't get to see it, but I was curious. But you're right. There's a stigma lately.
So there's this whole thing about
yeah.
the way it's been marketed, and I'll be honest, the trailer was kind of, sometimes when you see a trailer too many times, it's just like, oh. But I would say that this is the one instance where the movie wound up being better than the trailer for me. And sometimes the trailer has all the good parts of a movie and all that stuff, but I don't know. I second what Mike said about the fact that, like, co-writer and director Paul King is the perfect guy for this kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying that the movie does an excellent job of sinking itself as a, it's not sinking the ship, but sinking, SYNC, sinking itself as, a prequel, or I would say it's a companion piece to the 1971 movie. I don't expect Timothée Chalamet to be a young Gene Wilder. I mean, we would cast Jeremy Allen White for that. Okay. I don't expect to see that. I don't because I wanted to see, like, and we're not going to see how this guy became this hermit-like misanthrope, candy magnet. We're not going to see that in this movie. We're going to see a young Wonka, a young Willy, if you will, not even a Wonka. And I was entertained primarily because I appreciate the tone and the production design and the visuals of Paul King, and he had the same approach to the last two Paddingtons. I think kept the charm and the whimsy of it all is genuine and intact. It wasn't cloying to me. It had a charm, and I think Gene Wilder, was he the at the time the best singer that they could have cast? No, they cast it for the personality and for the character depiction. I would say the same thing with what the young Willy calls for. A kind of a charming, ambitious, positive kind of presence that, despite his unexpected hardship that he got himself into, he was still positive no matter what, and determined to make himself make a name for himself as a magical chocolatier. All that other stuff later is gonna come out later when he's just kind of Gene Wilder and had it with spoiled, greedy kids. But I enjoyed it. Some of the stuff was a little bit kind of like the whole one-note comedy thing with the chocolate addicted police chief played by Keegan-Michael. What is Keegan-Michael Key? Yeah. Yeah, that was a bit much. Yeah. A little of that went a long way. But I think if you look close enough in this movie, Paul King, I think, populates the movie with these ancillary, these supporting characters that feel very distinct for the environment, very much like Paddington. There's this whole, not a whole thing, but just this little, there's these two characters that just kind of wink at each other towards the end, and we get a little hint to them, and we feel like there's this life that they have in and of themselves within the movie, so they feel, they're barely there, but they feel yet developed and very sweet and interesting, so I think it's across the board, for the most part, it's well cast, and it's fun and sweet and charming, just like it set out to be, unlike the trailer. Yeah.
All right, Mark.
Well,
I mean, look, for those who have not seen your TikTok,
they don't need to see my TikTok. No.
By the way, was that was all a filter, right? Like, I can't believe that. Well, I shouldn't be surprised they haven't.
No, it was a
filter. That was
amazing. I didn't have makeup.
That's amazing.
But
and you just played the music behind you and everything?
Yeah, well, I found the music and I wrote the lyrics myself after I found the karaoke version and timed it out, and that it actually was one of my longer prep. It was one of those where it was just a thought of a fluke, and then I started working on it, and then you're committed when you start. You've got to then. And so I learned all kinds of interesting things about TikTok and saving videos and such last night, and with the filter and all of that. But
And the Oompa Loompa with the Batman T-shirt was great.
Yeah, you're like
cross
Keeping it on brand. Yeah,
keeping it on brand. It's fine. For what it is, for what it's set out to do, it's fine. I don't think this is one where you have to rush the entire family out to see on the big screen, in all honesty, because there wasn't really anything too much cinematic wise that really wowed me to say, wow, I need to see this on the big screen. The casting, I think the cast does fine with the material that's written. It's the thing is, this is Wonka with gloves off yet, and I understand it's supposed to be, but the thing is, they were pushing for a prequel, but there was I see why they cast Timothée Chalamet. It wasn't for the Gene Wilder comedy stuff. He's got a look to him, as we talk about. He's got the brooding aspect. He actually plays well the brighter aspect than I thought he would. But I was looking for a little bit more of the cynicism starting to build underneath the surface, which is something he could do. And you get glimpses. You get very brief glimpses of the darker side, possibly, of Willy Wonka throughout this. Very, very brief, but a look, a nod, the way he says something, the way he handles something a little, is just little hints. I was hoping for a little bit more of that. And in all honesty, I think they're trying to set this up for yet another film, because that's what they all do with anything like this nowadays, studios. We can't have it in one, because I think you'll get, if this did good enough, they would do a second film that would go between this one and the Gene Wilder one, so you could see how he became it. I was hoping it would be this one. We get a little more of the subversiveness. But in my review, it's like I said, it's Warner Brothers trying to be Disney. All the characters and everything in here reminded me of older school Disney bed knobs and broomsticks type of films. Not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying I didn't feel like there was a whole lot new that I was kind of hoping for, what I was kind of getting with the trailer and what they were talking about and hyping it up. And instead, you get, I liked Paddington, and I like Paddington 2. I think they're beautiful films. This one, I didn't quite feel that. And I don't know if it's just the world or the fact that they were kind of pushing this as a prequel, because I'm looking at this world that everything is taking part in here, and it doesn't fit the world that Charlie was in the 71. If this is supposed to be the prequel, how do you get from this world where there's all kinds of exaggerated and fanciful, you've got the chocolate cartel and everything's obsessed with candy and everything, over to real world where kids are just going to buy regular chocolate bars? How do you get to that? If you're going to do that, and I think that's what kind of took me aback by it. Again, what Mike and David said, it is sets out what it needs to do. It is for younger audiences. There's nothing wrong with it. But for me personally, as a viewer, I just found it middle of the road, kind of average. I liked Timothée Chalamet. I think he was one of the best parts, as was Hugh Grant. I liked Hugh Grant's the humor and his character and everything. And in fact, I wanted to see a little bit more of that interaction. I wanted to see a little bit more of, I wanted to stick a bit more with Wonka than some of the other characters, in all honesty. The chocolate cartel, while interesting, moves this film to a more fantastical unreality that I think part of the first one, and even the Burton one, which nobody here likes but myself probably, the whole point was there was the real world, and then there was Wonka's factory, which is supposed to be the fantastical world, and instead we get an entire world that's like Wonka's factory. And I think that took me out a little bit. I think if the rest of the world was a little bit more regular, I mean, don't get me wrong, I laughed at the innkeepers. Don't get me wrong, I laughed, but at the same time, I was kind of like, oh, they're bringing them back again. Oh, these are going to be characters that are sticking around for a while. And, and it just, I don't know. I think it was maybe the setting or whatnot, but for me, it is fine. It's a family film. For a cinematic experience, it was just like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I can't give this movie any credit. because it's well put together. But I mean, you guys keep mentioning Paddington. Obviously, I saw the first Paddington. I loved it. I think the second one, which I've heard is one of the great sequels.
It is even better. Yeah.
I don't think I saw it, and I gotta remedy that. But Paddington, the whimsy of Paddington does not belong with Willy Wonka. I can understand how Warner Brothers executive would say, "Oh, we'll get the Paddington guy because it's Wonka, it's bright, it's about candy and kids and whimsy." It's not. I mean, I came home from seeing this. Oh, sidebar, Mark, you already know this. Because of my schedule and the movie show times near my house, I paid $18 to see Wonka in IMAX. And the next day, Warner Brothers sent me a for your consideration envelope with a code to watch it at home for free. Oh my dear. Anyway,
yeah.
Were you alone when did you take any of the kids, or were you alone?
I was by myself. I mean, it was 8 o'clock, so the kids are long in bed. But yeah, I came home and my wife asked me, because she knew that I was not looking forward to this. She's looking forward to seeing it. But I said, this movie was made for people who will not watch old movies and don't like to read books. Because if you are going into this expecting any connection to the Roald Dahl story, or honestly, the movie from 1971, I mean, if you don't care about continuity, you don't care about characters or story or things lining up, then this movie is perfectly fine. It's serviceable. I don't think there's anything special about it. But if you're looking for where did this character come from, they don't even do a good job of making this a prequel story, because we catch up with Willy Wonka when he's 18 or 21 or however old. He has a flashback to when he was living in the swamp somewhere on a river boat with his thickly accented Irish mother. He goes to work in England. Yes, he goes to work in England, and he talks like Timothy Chalamet. This movie's a mess. To Mark's point, yeah, it takes place in a completely magical world, but I went back and I watched some of my favorite clips from the Wilder version today, because I'm like, was it that great? And yes, it was. I watched three-minute clips that I found on YouTube, and almost all of them brought me to tears.
Yeah.
There is the famous scene at the very end where Grandpa Joe asks Wonka, like, when does Charlie get the chocolate? And he says he's not getting the chocolate because of this, and this. And he says, you lose, sir. And then Grandpa Joe, I forgot this detail. He says, if Slugworth wants that gobstopper, he's going to get it. Wonka's going to rue the day that he messed with us. And then Charlie hangs back and he just puts that gobstopper on Wonka's desk and says, "Mr. Wonka," and he walks away. Yes. And, that there is nothing approaching that level of heart. I mean, this is a quote unquote family movie, but so was the 1971 version. And it didn't feel the need to be a cartoon for 5-year-olds in order to attract families and take people seriously. There's that whole idea. If you watch the 71 version and you listen to Grandpa Joe tell Charlie about Wonka, there's that whole story about, he was a great chocolatier and the factory was running day and night, but these other competitors kept sending spies into his factory. And so one day he closed the doors and the factory was shuttered for 3 years. And then 3 years later, mysteriously, candy started going out again, but no one was allowed into the factory. So there's this great mystery, because Charlie was like, well, if no one can get in or out, who's making the chocolate? And then Grandpa Joe's like, that's the greatest mystery of all. You can fill that in with, this is Wonka going to Loompa Land and recruiting, all of his helpers and all that stuff. But if you look at this film, at the end of the movie, everybody in the candy cartels, including Slugworth, who's mentioned by name as being the chief competitor who is sending in spies, gets arrested and sent up the river. Oh, and also, this is a nitpick I have a lot of modern movies, but you're going back to, let's say that Wonka takes place in the 1920s or 30s. If you're going to fast forward to Gene Wilder being in his 40s or 50s, or how old Wonka is supposed to be, I don't know that let's say this movie takes place in London, because, the 71 version did, and that's where the factory opens up at the end. that city was nowhere near as multicultural and diverse as it is in Wonka.
No.
And people might say, but it's a modern movie. I'm like, yes. But again, let's just say you're a little kid and you watch Wonka, and then your parent says, and there's another one that takes place a few years later. You'd be like, was there
Like
a
a
genocide? What happened to all the multicultural, diverse characters that were all over this movie? Where did they go? And plus, Slugworth in the prequel is played by a black man. Fine, but Slugworth in the Wilder version, which is the sequel, granted, we never actually see him because it is an employee of
Right.
Wonka, we're made to believe.
Mhm.
But if this is a famous chocolatier, one of the top 3 candy makers in the world, people are going to know what he looks like. And Charlie is not going to be fooled by, wait a second, I thought he was ... Just all of this stuff, there's so many like jagged edges to making this line up that it doesn't. And so me as a film goer, I'm thinking, what am I here for? It's kind of like if Star Wars The Phantom Menace, which, yeah, a lot of people have problems with that movie, including me. But what if we never got off of Tatooine with Anakin and it was just about him like building pod racers? You'd be like, well, wait a second. I know he becomes Darth Vader, but he's just like this, bright, cheery little kid who likes to help people and use the Force, and he dreams of doing something someday. And then the movie is over. Like, but wait, what? Where's the Empire? That's how I felt about Wonka. I'm like, this is a complete waste of my time. And yes, it's whimsical and everything, but if it doesn't fit the premise, what is it?
I'm okay with it not fitting the premise, because the premise for the 1971 Willy Wonka movie was its own premise and more loyal to the novel and everything. And sure, I will agree, though, at the end, I was having a conversation with my daughter, and she and I had seen a couple months back The Holdovers at Music Box, and she loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we liked about it is that it was set in the 70s. It was filmed like a movie from the 70s, and it felt like it was in the 70s. Every aspect about it. Now, I said, look, I like this movie in and of itself. I resolved to the fact that this is not going to sync well with the 1971 movie. It's not even going to feel like a movie from the 60s. It would have been awesome if it was a movie from London in the 60s or even late 50s. Sure, whatever. But that's not this movie, and I accepted that for what it is, and I enjoyed it in and of itself on those merits. But imagine if, Paul King would have taken that like Alexander Payne approach and just made this movie a period piece, and whether be in the 50s or whatever, similar to what he did in The Holdovers, where it just really felt like cinematography, production design, everything, it felt of that period. That would have been very interesting.
I agree, but the aesthetics, I think, are just one component of it. I mean, this movie has no guts. If it had, then you would have seen something like the end of this movie, because there is no guarantee that there's going to be a sequel. I mean, it costs a lot of money to make. It did okay in its opening weekend. I don't know how well it's going to hold over at the Christmas box office. That remains to be seen. But I haven't even heard buzz about a Wonka sequel, or like, hey, Chalamet signed up for a 3-picture deal, like a series or something. So we have to assume for right now that this is it, that you've got this version and the Wilder sequel. So at the end of this movie, I fully expected for something to happen, for Willy Wonka to have even a character arc. There's no growth in this movie. He doesn't actually learn anything important, and certainly nothing that would inform who we all know he would go on to become. This movie should have ended with him being heartbroken or disappointed or scared and shutting the doors to the factory. And his little Lofty, Hugh Grant is the best part of this movie. The performance, I even like the effects and his kind of little gadgets and everything. It's cute, it's funny, but it also has that wry sense of adulthood that was all over the Wilder version, that is just kind of dropped in here as a little bit of flavoring. But I think the whimsy should have been the flavoring, and the main ingredient should have been that, yes, we're in a world of pure imagination that's contained within a world that kind of rejects imagination. It's all about commerce and trying to steal the ideas, steal the secrets of this magical candy, not realizing that the candy is in fact magic. There's a great film in here. There's a great idea for a Wonka sequel. And I understand, David, that you are okay with it. I don't know how you make peace with this, because like I'm not. It's not a personal attack. It's just like I don't know how you can go in and not get that you were promised, except for the fact that they say how Willie became Wonka. It's a lie.
Yeah.
My oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was gonna say that you can actually go ahead.
Okay. I saw it with honorable son number 1. He's 23, and when we got done, he's like, "Oh, that was all right." He's like, "There was opportunities that they missed, because if anyone's ever heard of our when the credits roll, we get very spirited in our conversations." But he says he was fascinated when you got to the Charlie coming up with ways to make the chocolate. He loved those bits. He wanted to see more of that. We got the one flashback because of the Oompa Loompa connection of why it's going. He loved that bit. Here you've got a guy who's got this little chocolate factory he can literally make out of this box that literally has bottled lightning, bottled sunshine, all these wonderful magical components that, while you don't necessarily need the explanation, it'd be wonderful to see a little flashback of how he may have telling Noodle how he maybe got some of these ingredients, and doing a little flashback to show a little bit more of where this magic came from. Also, the fact that they're trying to play the poverty level with Wonka, yet this guy can seem to pull just about anything out of his hat. And they raised a bunch of money, okay? And I know he wanted to open his factory and that they sacrificed themselves, but for the amount of money that had to go into them building Wonka's factory, they couldn't have paid off. And he
let's just talk about opening the store. I mean, the factory is at the very end, but I mean, just to open that storefront, they got like a crazy amount of money.
And I get they were playing it that his friends wanted him to get the shop. That's fine, but his chocolate was hot enough and popular enough that they could have taken hot chocolate. I know. They could have taken the money they had, paid off the innkeepers, and gone about their business, and still done the business, and he's still been popular because of how, there was 2 different factions. I was like, you're trying to get me that he is destitute and desperate and running into roadblocks every step of the way to try to get his dream imagined, yet at the next moment you're showing me he can do just about anything because of the world of magic. I'm like, well, which is it then? Yes. Because if he can do this, why is he here? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't jiving. I was like, pick one or the other. I liked both components. It's just they're trying to build that sympathy of him not having the money and everything. I mean, literally his opening song is about how he ends up spending all of his money just walking through town and how he ends up broke.
Right. I think there's some great ideas in there, Mark. I mean, what if he had gone, shown up in this village or this town, London or whatever, and had this dream, and it was explained to him what it would take, and he didn't, maybe he had experimented with chocolate, he was a regular confectioner or something, but he realized he needed something really special in order to wow people and make a difference in this market. And that's when he and Noodle, forget about the whole, I'm sorry, I get the whole like landlord wash, enslavement thing, whatever, but it's not necessary. I love Olivia Colman, but throw all of that out. Have Wonka meet Noodle. She's just like a little street urchin, and he says, I'm going off to find, I got to find something really special. And they travel around the world and they find Loompa Land, and then they bring something back that wows everybody. And then the chocolate cartel teams up with them, and I don't know if they have the factory at that point, but they start sending in spies. So you could have it start to line up more with what we know about Wonka. Hell, you could even have like a really dark turn and have that whole bit where Noodle is actually the heir to the fortune of Slugworth's dead partner, whatever. what if a child of poverty coming off the street says, that's a really attractive offer and I can't resist it, and she becomes, part of that chocolate cartel, or she grows into it, and that breaks Wonka and he locks himself into his own factory and just does his own thing. I'm spitballing ideas. These are very rough, but this is the kind of stuff that I'm expecting out of what is, again, purporting to have a connection narratively, thematically, or whatever to the 1971 film. And this is all, it's just sunshine, candy, and rainbows. And that's not Willy Wonka.
No,
I guess it is now.
It kind of is.
Now is
How?
the factory
Sunshine, candy, and rainbows? That's Willy Wonka.
No. That's
there is
the stuff.
there's a sense of darkness to
there's
it
a
in the end,
subversiveness.
there's
That's the world of
these-
pure imagination that he creates within the confines of his world, right? But that's the other thing. Like in the original Willy Wonka, he describes things like snozzberries, and he talks about these kind of recipes and like mixing things together. But we don't actually see this like candy that has the power of the sun and the silver lining of the storms inside of it. I feel like it loses something when you go from the narrative to the visual. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's almost like a soft magic. Whereas this is where we got to show it to you. And I think to Mark your point, when they start getting explicit with this stuff, rather than just having it be kind of a cute idea or a notion, then you start asking the questions like, yeah, why are you having problems with any of these people? Just call down the power of Zeus that you use to infuse this chocolate and zap all of them. Or use your confectionery capabilities to literally make money. Or bribe the laundry people by saying, I will give you apparently love to eat, so I'm going to set you up with a lifetime supply of food. I can make out of this little box. How the hell do you get that little box? I want to know the story of that, because again, you're sailing up the river with your Irish mom and she dies apparently, and then the next thing you know, you're showing up in London, you've got this box that can do anything. What is going on here?
What's in the box?
Yeah, what's in the box?
Yeah. Which reminds me, that 7th anniversary 4K set comes in a replica Gwyneth Paltrow's head box.
I'm so looking forward to that.
Day one.
Now, was the factory that he built at the end of this film the same factory from the original film? Okay,
I think we're meant to believe it, but I didn't buy it. But I
didn't buy it because it was like this. It looks like this rundown castle that they turned into this factory. And yeah, if you remember again, I wish it would sync to the made it a period piece where it still felt like let's say mid 50s, late 50s feel of what was in the original movie. That's why I can't say that this is a prequel. It's just like this is a younger Willy Wonka, and okay, some of the visual designs are the Oompa Loompas look the same as the 1971 movie. Fine, good. Yeah, but
it's a knockoff, and it's not. I think what they were trying to do with it is they were trying really hard to be the opposite of the
Johnny
Tim
Depp
Burton
and
film.
Tim Burton,
yeah. I think they were like, okay, we can't, like, the original film does have those darker elements, but we got to avoid dark, get the Paddington guy, because we don't want people getting nightmares at the end of this one, like they did with the Tim Burton film, which was even more ghoulish than the original.
Yeah. Although overall I wasn't a huge fan of the Burton one, this movie made me at least respect that one a little bit more, because it was trying to do something totally different and very weird. And unsettling, even more like the whole depiction of Wonka in that movie is very uncomfy.
It's like we don't need to see once again Michael Jackson in there, because it's just that just rubs you in all the wrong ways.
What?
Yeah,
just like how Michael Jackson rubbed. No, I'm just kidding.
With like a Chanel Cocoa cut bob thing, whatever. White pasty white. What is happening? Yeah.
You don't want to leave.
I did like the Oompa Loompas in that one. That was fun.
Yeah, there was
Deep
like
Roy,
Deep Roy. There was the same actor that they CGI'd again and again. I don't know why they just didn't cast a bunch of dwarves at that point.
I mean, they did the original.
A dwarf. No, I'm just kidding, but I'm close to one. Yeah.
Wait, like if you move your camera? No.
Exactly. So
You're close to one. He's right over here.
Here's the thing. I think if you didn't have to, if you didn't feel the need to put a connection to the original in this at all, reboot, whatever you want to call it, it's its own thing. And it could almost be that if they didn't keep putting references to the original in it, including the Pure Imagination song. I think if you spin this, if you really want to do what they're trying to do, it is fine, but then make it its own entity altogether, just a retelling. Remember when the Coen brothers came out with True Grit, and some people are like, well, this isn't quite like the John Wayne. They're like, well, no, we adapted it from the book. We didn't adapt this from the other previous movie. This isn't a remake of the movie. It's from the same source material, but it is different. They should have did that here, but it's just Hollywood. Producers are afraid to doing something original. They have to feel they need to hit that nostalgia bug or that connection, or they don't feel like it's going to stand on its own. In all honesty, I think this film stands more on its own. Throw out the Pure Imagination line if you want. You know, even don't put Oompa Loompas into this. Don't have him meet an Oompa Loompa till the end of the movie, to where that's either a hook or the stinger, or even a mid-credit sequence where he meets an Oompa
That would have been funny at the end. Hey, kid, you stole my chocolate.
Right.
You stole my beans.
You know what I'm saying is I think they were trying to do both things here.
Sure. Please everybody.
And to try to please both, and they should have went new, because like you said, we have a whole generation now who do not watch older films. So you don't have to connect it. If you appeal to a younger audience, which is what this is trying to do, you don't need to connect it necessarily to any legacy stuff, because none of those kids are really going to watch the legacy stuff, even though we should. Don't get me wrong, even though they probably should. But you know what I'm saying is, if you're going to do what they wanted to do in this, then cut those ties, or don't put any of those ties till maybe the very end of the film. Then at least you're like, oh, okay, you know, but by doing the references throughout, which is what they do in this movie, it just keeps reminding me of a better film.
Right. And that's one of the dangers of prequels to, older movies, certainly, is if you come out with something that, is kind of mediocre. I mean, like, Mark, I assume that you said your son watched it and he's kind of like, it was all right. He's seen the Gene Wilder version, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Imagine a 20-something or a kid or whatever who hasn't seen it and watches this movie, and their parents are all excited and they made another one. If they're like, are they gonna be like, I don't want to watch that? if it's a sequel to this, completely missing out on a piece of magic, which I understand this is all about IP and making money and all that stuff. But I'm getting to the point now where it's like, if you don't have the inspiration to do something that can top or even try to come close to the thing that you're paying homage to, or sequelizing or prequelizing, honestly, don't bother. I understand it's all IP driven and it's all about the bottom line, but it's also, at the end of the day, because we're talking about movies, it's about art. And this is not, I don't think it's a piece of art. There are a lot of people who work very hard to bring this whimsical experience to the screen, but I still contend this is not the showcase for whimsy. Make Paddington 3 delight us, or come up, adapt another, something that is supposed to be at its heart whimsical, but I just don't see that here.
I would call it art, just maybe not good art, because anything is art. No matter what you.
I disagree with that. But
any piece of music can be art. I know. I'm
okay. Technically, yes, Mike, but I went to the Wonder Museum yesterday, and I was all excited about it. But it's full of that stuff. Like, everybody's an artist, and just turn these colorful knobs to change the colors on these LEDs. That's art. I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah, that's a totally different direction. But these people were trying to create a vision here. And they did create something that does appeal to young kids. Now, this isn't Willy Wonka at heart, but they were trying really hard not to be dark in it, and I think maybe they tried a little too hard in some aspects. But I did get a kick out of the stuff with the hotel owners. I would have liked to have seen Willy Wonka explore more than just the little town that he was in throughout the whole movie, which it's a wonderfully designed town, but you're starting to go, well, where does, like you guys were saying, where does he find all this chocolate? Where is that part of Willy Wonka? And it seemed to not have that in the movie.
Well, I mean, it was all in a giant cistern underneath the cathedral that was being managed by the candy cart.
That's what's funny is the church was protecting the candy cartel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With 500 chocoholic monks. Okay, let's say we leave in the laundry people. Maybe their laundry is in an old giant castle for some reason, and whatever, Wonka ends up taking over control of that enterprise and turning it into his chocolate factory. I don't know. There's just so many different avenues. Like, if you're going to have this nonsense in your film, connect it to something. One of the things that I think worked about the 2005 Tim Burton movie is it was a reboot, and it was set in 2005. There, you could do something with a Wonka, if you want to do a Wonka prequel and get away from the specter of Gene Wilder completely. Have Timothée Chalamet as a young, ambitious, crazy chocolatier wannabe in 2023, and have it, because one of the things that
social
works,
media and everything.
Yeah, I was about to say,
right, because
you have
one of the
the Willy Wonka's
TikTok.
TikTok page, and
No,
they could have
no. What I'm saying is,
no, sir.
No, sir.
Lose.
What one of the great things about the book and also the Wilder version was it was about kids, and it was about kids learning lessons about how to be good people, because they were rotten because of TV and unchecked wealth and privilege and all that other stuff. There is a whole slew of problems afflicting this generation, or the last couple actually, that you could, if you want to do a social commentary and a, dare I say, whimsical movie, the material is all there. What if there was this guy who set up this chocolate factory, or wanted to, and he recruits kids who are addicted to TikTok, or they don't like to go outside, or they have no imagination because it's been sapped from them because it's being supplied to them by all this multimedia they're assaulted with. Help people discover or rediscover the magic and the possibility of life. Now I'm getting all sappy and everything, but you could do something with that there. Almost turn it into like a candy colored version of Saw, where there's I don't know, because if you look at Willy Wonka, the original, that's kind of what it is. Like, can you resist the temptation to go in the don't go in that chocolate river? I'm gonna go in the chocolate river.
Look, Charlie.
Or when they go through that crazy tunnel and it's like an acid trip.
Yeah.
That scared me when I was a kid, man.
Yeah.
That was creepy. It was creepy.
Right. Do that now, but with VR. Hey kids, put on these VR helmets and something goes horribly wrong, and they go.
We're not in a boat. We're still in a room.
But or more so, he removes the VR helmet and he's like, "This is better." And then they go through the thing that they do in the original.
Yeah, you could do that thing. You could play it up to where even, you could add it either during a credit sequence or whatnot, where social media is exploding because there's this huge factory being built, but no social media, no accounts, no connections, no communications of what it is or what it is. It's just this mysterious chocolate factory that we know chocolates come out of that people eat. And you could have conspiracies, you could have all kinds of, but nobody communicates. You just get this wonderful chocolate distributed from it. And then he pulls in influencers of various types into the chocolate factory. You could have just done a reboot and still did it. And again, I don't think I'm far off by saying this is Warner Brothers trying to be Disney, because this felt like it really, really wanted to be a Disney film.
But here's, Mark, I think you just hit on it though. Having it set in a modern era, unconnected from the Wilder version, is how you make this version of Wonka, this Timothée Chalamet, work, because he is completely uncynical. It'd almost be, minus the mental, deficiencies, like a modern day Forrest Gump, where you've got all these people. You've got Lieutenant Dan, you've got Jenny. They're all like cynical and hard bitten and done wrong by the world. But then you've got this guy who teaches them, there's some great stuff out there, and you are a beautiful person. And if you just like put away all the nonsense, you can reach your full potential or come back from tragedy or whatever. That would be a really cool message. I feel like I'm 80 years old, but a message for today.
Kids.
Right.
People are so cynical, like, yeah, we can't afford to, we can't afford to grow up. Everything's expensive and the world's, everyone's at each other's throats and everything. What if there's this guy who comes along and says, come with me to a world of pure imagination, possibilities, and enjoy some chocolate? Exactly, David.
And
So
you
I
can
think,
even throw in virtual Sammy Davis and singing the Candyman again. Everybody forgets, that song was in there, and it's a beautiful song, and I love Sammy Davis and my jazz and my.
Who could take a rainbow?
Exactly. The thing is, and that's why I was trying to hopefully in my little Oompa Loompa review, but the film is fine. It's just fine for a standard family film. It's just the fact if they tried a little bit too hard to not have it, but have it attached to the Gene Wilder one. If they would have just done their own thing, really, I think this would have been at least sit a little bit better with most people. You can do something that might seem similar, but it's completely different. You can get away with that now. I mean, doing it a lot more.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's Hershey, not Ghirardelli.
Exactly. What's worse?
I paid Ghirardelli prices for this Hershey, though. I might add.
I've got Linder. There we go.
There you go.
But I think the worst part of it is for what this film is. It felt like it was streaming quality, and I feel bad saying it, but we're seeing more of this, and this isn't the only one, especially kind of the lighter family films. Now, I haven't seen Wish yet, but a lot of the material geared towards young kids is stuff that I could see going direct to streaming. Doesn't necessarily need to be on the big screen. Some of this stuff that they're putting out on the big screen, does it need to be? Because in all honesty, like I said, most of the fantastical stuff that happens in this film would have looked just fine on a big screen TV too. There wasn't really anything that I was like, wow,
right.
And the material isn't wow. It's good enough for kids, but at the same time, is it good enough for you to pay your $18 for IMAX or me to pay my money?
I think that's a growing problem with the amount of content we produce and with also how high of quality the products are on streaming services now. You can watch something like The Mandalorian, or you can watch one of the various Marvel shows, and it looks just as good as the movies. And when you have that and you have these streaming options, it kind of makes you go, do I really want to go to the theater to see Willy Wonka? And I have to agree, it probably would have looked better on the small screen, because that Hugh Grant on the big screen,
I love it.
Oof. Yeah, like I loved Hugh Grant, but I didn't like the animation on his face.
Did Mike, did you see this at a screening or in
I saw a screening.
Okay, so the rest of us saw it like in a regular release setting. In the trailers, I found it very interesting, and this is kind of off topic a bit. I found it very interesting that Pixar is going to be releasing Soul, Turning Red, and Luca.
Yeah.
Like January, February, March, or February, March, April, now in theaters. Who's going to go see those? I mean, they would be great to see on the big screen, but who's going to go see those when you have Disney Plus?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought watching those trailers. I'm like, I think Disney is just determined to kick off 2024 with even more losses than they had in 2023.
Yeah, because didn't those movies bomb?
No, I mean,
they were during COVID,
Disney Plus,
so they were Disney Plus.
Okay.
They were received well and they were reviewed well.
Yeah.
But
I remember I saw Luca. I think was that at a screening, or that might have been.
No, I don't think it was.
I think it was. I just remember I didn't like it. I'm like, oh, this is just the same exact thing as every other animated film I've ever seen. It's a story about
Pixar
someone
version
who
of
has.
Call Me by Your Name, you know.
Yeah, it's Luca is like, call me by your name. Was there a scene where like there was a peach?
No, yeah, there
But-
is. He rolled over a peach on his bike.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, Turning Red and Soul, great movies. They got, you know, a good
Yes.
buzz and got good reviews and got awards and everything. But I just don't. It's like, hey guys, we don't have really anything. We're gonna put these on the big screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
if you didn't catch it on TV for free,
Yeah.
that was your chance to see it in the theater.
Right.
For
Go and pay
You-
for
you-
parking and
Now you
popcorn.
mention it. Now that you just mentioned it, and it hasn't really dawned on me because there's so much content out. But you're absolutely right. They're cutting off the Marvel flow for a year.
Mhm.
I haven't seen really anything. Oh, I'm sorry. The Pixar, the new one. But that's not till 2025, isn't it? The emotion.
Yeah. Oh no, Inside Out
Inside
2
Out
is
2?
coming out
2,
in
this
June
coming
or
summer.
May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in June or May. But I mean,
Yeah.
they don't. As far as the pantheon of releases done by Disney, it is sparse next year by a
Mm.
And I'm
lot.
cool with that. It's just
Yeah.
And that's fine. And that's
Don't-
fine. But it just made me realize, why are they re-releasing these 3 films? I'm like, oh, because they really don't have a whole lot coming
Yeah.
out. next year.
I mean, that's the other thing.
Hey.
It's a weird strategy because, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I imagine, okay, let's release 3 movies in theaters staggered by a month
Mhm.
that are probably not going to do that well.
Because
And
they
then-
probably know that.
Right, but within 3 months, they're going to
Mhm.
have a movie in the theater that's brand new that they might want to get people out to see. But if the psychology might be like, well, I'll just wait for Disney Plus. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, let's just say a parent did take their kids to see those 3 movies in January, February, and March. They're gonna be like, yeah, let's spend another $120, whatever it is, to go see Inside Out when I could just wait until, let's say, September and watch it on streaming.
Now,
I don't know.
granted, the only audience this is really for are the people who've A, never seen it, and
Mhm.
B, don't subscribe to Disney Plus.
Right.
So, okay.
How
Those
I don't
people
know
who
what
have
I don't know how small that
Yeah,
I
it's-
imagine there's a very small overlap.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Disney super fans who aren't going to pay
Yeah.
$10 a month to have the entire library for free.
Yeah. The Venn diagram's very slim.
Yes. So okay, I just thought of something. Mark, you reminded me of the flying candy sequence. Another way this, and we'll kind of close it out on Wonka here with my last gripe, in terms of continuity. You've got, let's call it the 1930s, this giant town square where one day all of the 3 magnates of these candy cartels start flying up into the sky because they had this magical candy by this guy Willy Wonka. In the Gene Wilder version, there's so much mystery around Wonka, and his candy doesn't do any of that stuff. You don't learn that he's even tinkering with it until you get into the factory. I would think that there'd be a different angle to the golden ticket instead of, oh my gosh, we're going to get a look inside this mysterious factory that no one's ever been inside, rather than, oh my God, we're going to get a golden ticket to see the place where they made that flying candy from 40 years ago. Like, there's no mention of any of this magic or whimsy that takes place in this same world, the same continuity, even though it was a few decades before. That would have been the biggest story, the pre-social media era, like UFO conspiracy story of London for 4 decades. It's just so strange that they didn't think to put this together, because I think on some level they just didn't care. They're like, it's like Robert Downey Jr. said in Natural Born Killers, playing Wayne Gale. He says, nobody remembers anything. It's like, this is a junk food for the brains. Yeah,
Wow.
there you go.
Never thought we'd bring that movie up.
But it's 31 this year,
Wow.
or this coming year. Anyhow, guys, thank you for indulging me with this wonderful conversation about Wonka. We don't see eye to eye, and that's okay. That's the wonderful diverse
You
world of
see face
opinions.
to face.
You can back up now, David.
Sorry.
No,
Chocolatier to chocolatier.
I'm shedding a chocolate tear.
There you go.
And so, yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here. It's been a very interesting discussion. Folks who are watching this now or in the future, what did you think of Wonka? Are we way off? No, sorry. Am I way off base here?
Usually.
I know that we've got some mostly positives and a big negative, but my big negative is mostly a shrug. I may watch this movie again with my family because they want to see it, and some people you just can't pull back from the train tracks. But so we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I think we're gonna be back next Thursday, this same bat time, same bat channel, or maybe like a half hour earlier, to talk about. Yes, Mark. Yes, we're ending with a talk about a DC movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my man.
Lost Kingdom.
Come on, bro. Let's go. I'm Aqua, bro.
Aqua Bro, Aquaman 2, The Lost Kingdom.
I might not be there for that.
But
What,
I
David?
can't wait
No,
for
come on.
I can't wait for the crossover when they have Aquaman 3, The Lost Kingdom versus the Kong X Godzilla, the New Empire. They clash. Yes.
That makes
That's
sense,
what I
actually.
want.
I can
It
see
does, doesn't it?
I would just see like the opening shot of just like Godzilla stepping down and crushing his foot through Atlantis and
Killing
squashing
Nicole
Jason
Kidman.
Momoa.
that. Heartbreak feels good in a place like this. Blub, 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 blub.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm sorry. AMC can't make that movie better. I mean, I'm prejudging it, but
Did you notice that AMC made that ad shorter now? Soon it's just going to be...
there are a couple of different cuts. Yes, I also noticed they keep saying it's like 1920 to 2020. I'm like, yeah, time to get a new commercial. But I'm one of the few people on the planet who does get the snuggly wugglies whenever I see that high heel splash through the puddle. I'm like, oh, this is it. Love this commercial.
And I love how she walks into an empty theater. It's like, you're supposed to... What? Okay.
It was
She's wearing
2020.
like a nice suit in the theater. She's not dressed like people usually are dressed when they go to the theater, but
Well, no, that is the thing though. That's her own personal AMC theater.
yeah,
in her house.
They should have
just
done
in
it
her
right with
house.
like Keith Urban waiting for her with popcorn and like they're both in hoodies with sunglasses and ball caps.
And a phone. He's got a phone in his pocket because
Yeah.
you can only record the movie if
right.
you have a hoodie.
That's right.
That's right.
Nice. All right. Well, gang, this has been a lot of fun. I'm going to let us all go and enjoy some nice Thursday evening chocolate. I don't know what that means. I have, as always, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have David Fowlie of Keeping It Real. Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree. Go and check out our very odd top 10 movies of 2023. I had not expected to whip that out, I did.
You whipped out what, when, how?
He whipped out something with Mike. You got to see that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you can only see it if you subscribe to YPA.
You'll probably agree.
You'll probably like what you see.
You'll probably agree with what Ian whipped out.
Yeah, it was a long, hard 10. Anyway, and we also have Mark, the movie man Krawczyk of Special Mark Productions in the Spoiler Room. So everybody, thank you, and thank you all out there for hanging out and watching us talk Wonka. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. If you don't like what you see, leave a comment and tell us, what went wrong with the live stream or the movie at hand. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, next Thursday at 8 p.m. Central. Thank you all very much. Take care, and enjoy some pure imagination on me. Yeah, that's the ticket, the golden ticket.